Well, hello students. Welcome to this Edpuzzle lesson on summarizing a passage. One thing that we're going to do this year is learn how to take a passage in a textbook and dig into it for yourself and figure out what the important parts in it. Basically, so that you can get to the point of the passage. So, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm sure right now you're asking yourself, why should I even learn how to summarize a passage in a textbook? Well, being able to do that is a very, very important skill. As you get older, as you go into high school, as you go into college, more and more the responsibility for what's in the textbook is going to be left to you. By the time you get to college, you'll probably have some classes where you'll be tested over the textbook, even though the professor never mentioned anything from a reading assignment in the class all semester. They will have given you a syllabus that tells you what pages to read, but then they won't even necessarily discuss it in class. I had a professor, my geography professor in college, that did that. Fortunately, the student that I bought my textbook from had warned me about this particular professor, so I was prepared and I read the textbook, and when we went into the first test, I was well prepared. So, a couple of things that summarizing a passage in a textbook does for us. First of all, it helps you to find the main ideas in a passage. And as you do that more and more and practice it more and more, not only will your ability to pull information out of a passage in a book increase, your writing skills will improve as well. Secondly, it helps you to learn how to prepare study notes for yourself. Alright, so let's talk about what a summary really truly is. And basically, a summary is simply a short account of the central ideas of a passage. And as we go through this lesson, you'll see more and more about what that looks like. Now, it is not a place for three different things. Number one, it's not a place for your opinions. You're just basically trying to get the information that is in the passage without putting your personal slant on it. You can take that information and use that to help guide your opinions about things, but that's not the summary is not a place for that. Secondly, it's not a place for background knowledge. You may already have some knowledge about the particular topic, but you don't put that in the summary. The summary is basically just a record, a short account of what the textbook says and not what you already know. And it's not a place for any kind of personal information. All right, so let's talk about how to summarize. The first thing you need to do is actually read the passage. Don't just hunt and pick through it. Take a few minutes, read the passage, and then you can begin the actual process of summarizing it. By reading it first, you'll have an overall perspective of where it starts out and where it's going and where it ends up, rather than trying to summarize as you go along and maybe not really seeing the key ideas and the key points in the passage. Number two, don't let big words scare you. That's what the glossary is for. If there's a word that you don't know or understand, maybe it was a vocabulary word from class that you know the definition to, or you can just turn to the glossary in the back of the book and see what it says, and then put that into your own words as you write your summary. And then number three, you need to ask yourself, what was the text about? Now, this question is very, very important, and it's your answer to this question that should be a complete sentence or two. If the paragraph is fairly short, then you should be able to answer that question, what the text is about, in one complete sentence. If it's a bit longer paragraph, then it will probably require two sentences to do that and do it in a good job. Already some of you are liking this, that I'm asking you to write sentences rather than paragraphs. Well, if you're given a paragraph and you write a paragraph about it, you're not really summarizing it. You're just repeating it. So these summaries, though, are going to force you to think through the information and think about how you can condense it into just one or two sentences. Okay? Your answer to this question, what was the text about, should cover the main point and the key ideas. And in a little while we'll talk about what the main point is and what key ideas are. And it should be in your own words. Make it your own. If you're just copying what the book says, you're not really processing it and you really don't understand it. If you can't put it in your own words, you really don't understand it. And lastly, your answer to this question shouldn't be just a word or two. It should be a complete sentence at least. Okay, the next question is, should it go in my summary? This is the part where you start looking at the paragraph and figuring out what's important to put in the summary and what's not important to not put into the summary. So use this guideline to help you out. Only major ideas and necessary information should go into a summary. So before including something in your summary, ask yourself this question. Do you need this information to understand the passage? If the answer is yes, put it in your own words and then put it into your summary. If the answer to that question, do you need this information to understand the passage, is no, then don't put it in your summary. Again, we're just trying to get the bare bones information out of the reading passage and out of the paragraph. So let's talk about what a main idea is and what key points are, and what the difference between them is. And also we'll look at maybe supporting information, supporting points. Okay, the main idea is what the passage is about. And usually that main idea can be found in the topic sentence of a paragraph. So as you practice this, you'll understand what a topic sentence is more and more, and that will help you in your reading as well as in your writing. Now, key points are a little bit different. They are arguments or information that is used to support the main idea. So basically we're starting out with the main idea, then we have key points which support the main idea. And key points may be developed or elaborated with supporting details. Now, your summary should only include main ideas and key points, not supporting details. And if we wanted to kind of outline this, we would start at the top with key points, and then we'd start out with the main idea, and then we would have 2 or 3 key points to support that main idea, and then each key point would have maybe 1, 2, or 3 supporting details. We're not interested in those supporting details for the key points, but we are interested in the key points that support the main idea. And in class, we'll talk about this some more, and I'll help you to try and understand what the difference is between key points and supporting details. Okay, let's start out by looking at an example passage. We're going to start out, we'll actually do 2 example passages. The first one's fairly short, the second one's a bit longer, so we can practice this a little bit. And here is the example passage. I'll read it out loud, and you can read along and follow. A penny for your thoughts. If it's a 1943 copper penny, it could be worth as much as $50,000. In 1943, most pennies were made from steel since copper was needed for World War II. So the 1943 copper penny is ultra rare. Another rarity is the 1955 double die penny. These pennies were mistakenly double stamped, so they have overlapping dates and letters. If it's uncirculated, it would easily fetch $25,000 at an auction. Now, that's a pretty penny. What I want you to do is take a second, pause the video, and look and see if you can find maybe the two main points that are in this passage. Okay, so we're looking for two main points. The first main point is here. The 1943 copper penny is ultra rare. The second one is here. It talks about the 1955 double die penny. Those are the two main points. Now, in this particular paragraph, there isn't necessarily a topic sentence. But by looking at it, you can kind of get the idea that there are some examples, maybe a couple of examples in this case, of pennies that are worth a lot of money. So let's take these two main points here and this main idea that there are a couple of different types of pennies that are very valuable, and see if we can use that to help write a good summary. So maybe to help you do that, let's talk about some incorrect examples. And let's look at our first response here. Okay, so someone summarized this by saying this passage is about pennies. I want you to stop and think for a second. Okay, what are some problems with this as a summary? It's a complete sentence, which we're looking for, but there are some problems with it. Okay, the first thing is this response is just too short. It doesn't really elaborate on anything. And going along with this response does not include those key ideas that we were talking about. So let's look at another example of an incorrect response. The 1943 copper penny is worth a lot of money. Copper was hard to get during the war, so there aren't many of them. The 1955 double die penny is worth a lot too. These pennies were stamped twice on accident. So pause this for a second and take a moment or two to think about what might be wrong with this particular response. Well, this response goes to the opposite extreme of the first one. It has way too much unnecessary information. Really what we have here are supporting details that go beyond just the main points. So we have this main point here about the 1943 copper penny, and we have the main point here about the 1955 double die penny, but for the first one it goes into an explanation as to why it's valuable, and the same thing happens with the second one. So there's really too much unnecessary information there. Also, the main idea isn't clear. Somebody looking at this, or even if you went back and looked at it later after taking notes on it, you might have to think a little bit to realize what the main idea was. Really, you should have some kind of an allusion at least to a topic sentence in here. So let's look at a correct example of the response, and as you imagine, it's going to be somewhere between the first one and the second one. And actually, I think I'm just going to stop right here and see if you can go ahead and write out or type out what you think would be a correct response. Now you may have to think back to, and actually the passage is printed in your notes, so you can take a quick look at that, and then we'll move on with an example of a correct response. Yours doesn't have to necessarily be just like mine, but it should be somewhat close to it. All right, now that you've done that, let's take a look. Okay, two examples of very rare and valuable pennies are the 1943 copper penny and the 1955 double die penny. So as looking at this, you can see it really is kind of in between the first two for length, but it has all the elements that we're looking for. It includes key information, and it doesn't include unnecessary information, and it is a complete sentence. One thing it does, you have the two main points here about the 1943 copper penny and the 1955 double die penny, and then you have at least an allusion to what the main idea, the topic of the paragraph is. Excuse me. All right, let's look at another example passage here, and I'll read it out loud while you follow along. When one hears the term reality applied to a television show, one might expect that the events occur naturally or at the least were not scripted. But this is not always the case. Many reality shows occur in unreal environments, like rented mansions occupied by film crews. These living environments do not reflect what most people understand to be reality. Worse, there have been accusations that events not captured on film were later restaged by producers. Worse still, some involved in the production of reality television claim that the participants were urged to act out storylines premeditated by producers. With such accusations floating around, it's no wonder many people take reality TV to be about as real as the sitcom. So let's look at some example responses here. And in each of these example responses, we're going to find some good things about them, and we're going to find some bad ones. And then the last one, number 4, we'll see a well-written response. Okay, so example response number 1. This is about how reality shows are real and some are staged. Okay, well, I think you can see there some things that are probably missing, but yet one thing that is included that is important. First of all, it covers the main idea. If you look at it, that sentence right there really covers what the main idea for the whole paragraph was. But unfortunately, it does not cover any of the key points. Okay, let's look at another example response. Reality TV is fake because the shows are filmed in unreal environments. Okay, hopefully you've taken a moment here to think about this and what some positives are and what some negatives about it are. So, first of all, it does cover the main idea. And it does cover one key point, the idea that these shows are filmed in unreal environments. But it does miss two other key points that were made in the passage. Okay, example response number 3. Reality applies to television, and some think participants were pushed to act out the storylines. But people understand that even reality television sometimes doesn't reflect reality. So what this one does, it does cover the main idea and a key idea. The main idea being that the whole idea of reality television, and then the main idea, and then the key idea, a supporting idea that participants were pushed to act out the storylines. But it actually this would be a negative here, and for some reason I have it wrong on here. It should be in red and have a negative sign in front of it, but um, it includes opinions into it, which we don't want. And another problem is it misses some of the other key ideas that were in there. So think of this as being read with a negative sign in front of that. And I'm going to have to go back and fix that, aren't I? Ha ha. Okay, let's look at example response number 4, which is a good response. Supposed reality shows are actually fake because of unreal locations, scripts, and fake scenes. A little bit shorter than the previous one, and actually about the same length as some of the others, but it really is done very well. It covers the main idea, the idea of reality shows being fake. It covers all of the key ideas, all 3 of them, and it's in the author's own words. It wasn't borrowed from the passage itself. And last but not least, it does not include opinions or background information. Okay, this concludes this Edpuzzle lesson. Hopefully you had an opportunity to take all the notes as you went along. I forgot to tell you to do that at the very beginning, but I'll make sure I tell you about that in class, at least remind you of it. And that's all for this particular lesson, all secure in Sector 7. Bye-bye.